What was the Jets game like the week before? When I think back on my fandom as a Browns fan, I think that's the most excited I had ever been at any sporting event. Did you ever experience that kind of euphoric high on a football field?
I don't think so. I mean, it was pretty amazing that we were still fighting and we were coming back. And I remember looking up and seeing that the fans were leaving. And I'm going, God, we must really look bad. And of course, we started coming back, and people are cheering, and people are pounding on the side of the stadium. Let us back in!
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. We sit down with former and current Cleveland Brown greats to talk about their careers, their upbringing, and what they're up to now. And we are thrilled to be joined for today's episode with former defensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns, Bob Golic. Bob, great to see you. You look great, as always.
Thank you very much. You maybe make me feel like I'm back in television again. The Bob Golic episode.
At least for today, you are, my friend. You are.
Okay, good enough.
We dig deep. We talk about your childhood, your college years, your professional years, and then what you've been up to in your post-playing days.
Gotcha.
And before we dive into all of that, I always like to start by asking a simple question. And it's sometimes not so simple for the folks to answer because they have so many great memories. But As you look back on your years with the Cleveland Browns, what is that sort of snapshot moment for you, that quintessential memory that comes to mind about your time with the Browns?
God. And you're right. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I was being born and raised in Cleveland and being a Browns fan all my life, and then coming and playing for the Browns. I don't know that I could pick one. I don't know that I have the snapshot that I could look to. I'm buying time. I'm talking while I'm thinking. I can still do that.
And doing it very well, I might add.
Well, thank you very much. Usually you're not supposed to tell somebody that's what you're doing. But, yeah, I mean, I can look at just about any game and pick out things. I think my first practice with the Browns, when they picked me up off the waiver wire from the Patriots. And I just remember coming in thinking to myself, okay, they want to play me a nose tackle, but I'm really a linebacker. And so I figured that I'd play nose tackle, but I would be a linebacker like during scout team.
Sure.
And then of course the coaches would see what an incredible linebacker I was, and they would get rid of people like Tom Kuzno and Clay Matthews and but as I said many times, once my hands hit the ground, the mud never got off of them. I stayed down.
Did you like that? Were you okay with that, or did you feel more comfortable at a linebacker?
I felt initially I felt, well, I played 4 years of linebacker at Notre Dame. They moved me up into the line once in a while, kind of as a nose tackle type thing, but it was just to give a different front look. When I played linebacker with the Patriots, they found out that I had a problem with, it was just a small problem. It was covering running backs man to man out of the backfield, and which was a huge problem. In fact, I had to cover somebody coming out of the backfield, I would usually try and go and tackle them behind the line of scrimmage so I wouldn't have to run with them. And they said, Bob, you can't keep doing that. So when the Browns picked me up and moved me, I put myself, in fact, I asked him, I asked Tom Pratt, the defensive line coach, I said, well, how am I supposed to line up? He goes, I don't know, just find a way to get comfortable. And so I'm going, okay. And he called me back because I was heading into the hot tub. But I got down, and I guess I futzed around a little bit, but I ended up lining up as a nose tackle about 1.5 yards off the ball. Sometimes even a little bit more. because I like to be able to flow with the line either way, no matter who was blocking and what kind of blocks they were using. To the point where I think Marty, with those guys, were saying it was like a nose backer. And I asked Tom Pratt one time after the game. We'd watched the film, and he was critiquing everybody. And I said, so, and he didn't say anything about me. And I said, Coach, so, how was my game? He goes, I don't know. I don't know what you're doing. He goes, I don't know what that's called. He goes, I can't coach that. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Kind of invented your own thing, didn't you, Bob?
Yeah, it was kind of nice.
And we'll talk about that later. But I want to go back to the early years now. What a household you grew up in. Dad was a former professional football player of note. I believe won a Grey Cup during his years with the CFL. So,
no, but he showed me one, but he didn't win it. Yeah, he was 7 years in the CFL. He actually went to Hollywood High School, played up against, went to school with Tom Kuzno's dad.
Wow.
The two of them went to college together in Indiana. But my dad went to the Marines first. And then when they came out, he went to Indiana. Him and Tom Kuzno's dad were roommates. But he stayed a year. They wanted him to come back, but he didn't go back. And he went up to CFL, played up there with Hamilton, and probably most of the time with the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
So that's quite an upbringing, and I'm sure having two brothers also helped with the competitive juices in the Golic household. What was it like in the early years growing up in the household?
I thought they had no athletic ability at all. They were younger than me. They were just little kids, and the most they did that was athletic was pick on me, and then run and tell mom if I did anything to them. So, but they were pretty quick. I knew at that point they could move.
Right.
And had some good movement, a little change of direction. But as time went on, we all started playing ball. It was at different levels. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was nice. We kind of like, I guess they looked to me and watched what I was doing. And my dad would actually take me out in the summertime. He would take me to I think it was a Willow Junior High, to this football field. And all my buddies are on the baseball field playing beer softball. And I'm on the football field with my dad, running drills, conditioning, doing all these things. And but afterwards, I always knew where to get a nice cold beer. But
hey, it paid off though, right?
Heck yeah, it paid off. I became very good at beer drinking. But my dad was like that. He got involved. When I first started in grade school, he did the same thing with Mike and Greg. When I first started playing, he went to the school, got a school that had an old tackling dummy, and brought it home. And so every day before I went to practice, he'd pull the tackling dummy out. Wow. And he would have me tackle it. He would have me block it like an offensive lineman, do blocking. He just wanted to kind of get me basics, get your stance, get your stance right. And he continued that with my brother. So we were all pretty much taught the same way.
Bob, aside from the DNA, which you get from Dad, what role did he play in you eventually having a decades plus long career in the NFL? How much credit do you throw Dad's way for that?
I give them all.
Really?
Well, I mean, obviously, I had to work, I had to drill, I had to do these things. But in order to do that, I mean, I had to motivate to do the work that you want to do. He had always told me, he goes, Bobby, don't play if you don't love playing the game. Because if you don't love playing football, because you're not going to play well, and you're going to cheat yourself, and you're going to cheat your teammates, more importantly. And so, of course, when he first told me that, I was like 10, and I went, okay, Dad. But I understood what he meant along the way. But, you know, there was something about his commitment to me that looking back on it after all these years, I get this feeling like I did a lot of it because it made him happy.
Right.
And I know that sounds like it sounds like I totally gave up on the idea that do it for yourself, but it made me happy coming home and say, oh yeah, we won this week, or oh hey, I won this award, or
sure.
And my parents would get excited, and it made me really, really happy to have that happen and be able to share that with them. And so I'd say it's between me liking to play and me liking to play and succeed to make my parents happy. It was about 50-50 probably.
Yeah. Where did the work ethic come from?
Oh, Dad. Yeah, this was when he would work out with us, it wasn't, hey, let's work out until we're tired, or let's work out until it's time to go, let's go have dinner. You know, we'd work out till we were done. And somewhere along the way, I started understanding that you had to get things done. You had to, you know, you don't stop until you do what you need to do to succeed. I mean, the last 3-4 years of my career, I would go out after practice, and I would just hit these, you know, the sleds, and I'd hit the big dummies and push them around, and you know, get my stance and work on coming out quickness either way, because I knew that as I got older, there was things I needed to get better at, which was the technical part of things. So, you know, it was the knowledge that they imparted that basically said, hey, you can't stop getting better. You can't stop. I mean, eventually you're not going to be better, and they're going to say, hey, Bob, sorry. Do you have a secondary job? Do you remember what your degree was in college? But you know, at the time, I knew that I had to, in order to keep playing, I had to do more, and that came from him.
How old were you, Bob, when you got introduced to competitive sports, and what was your first foray into competitive sports? What sport was it?
Swimming. I know I don't look that hydrodynamic, but I'd learned how to swim at the Willowick, the pool at Willowick and Dudley Pool, and I got pretty good at it. And says, hey, you know, you're a little kid, you know, like 7, 8 years old. He goes, you want to be in the swim team? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I got in the swim team, and then in the wintertime, I would be at the West End YMCA over in Willoughby, and I'd swim on their swim team. And I think the thing I liked most about swim team was like when you went to like tournaments, these big meets, you brought a box of Jello. And you would sit there and you'd stick your finger in the Jello and eat it, because supposedly all that sugar was going to give you energy. But it was like the coolest thing for me. I'm like, oh my God, I get to swim and eat a box of Jello. I mean, this was like the coolest thing.
You know, how long did you swim? When did you move out?
Until I didn't really move swiftly through the water anymore.
Which was how old?
11.
Yeah.
11, 12, getting on 12, something like that. I tried, but it also got to the point too, and my dad wouldn't let us lift weights when we were young. He said we wait until we're like 15, 14, 15, something like that, because he just felt you shouldn't start too early. He said push-ups, sit-ups, you know, deep knees, whatever you got to do. But it got to the point where my training for football, the muscles and the muscle memory I was getting in football didn't translate into moving swiftly through the water. And so when it got to the point where I had people jumping in to save my life trying to swim, I figured maybe this isn't for me anymore.
Yeah, right.
So Mike and Greg did that too. As a matter of fact, I think Mike still has. I think he still has records at the West NY.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he had a relay record. I heard him talking about it on the radio once. I think he had a relay record that was just recently broken. And so, I mean, it's still, that's a long time to have a record. I mean, he was doing that in the 80s. So,
and he's still talking about it. Come on, Mike.
Wait, does that surprise you for a second, Bob?
No. Oh, okay. God, no.
So, Bob, at what point did you find wrestling, and did Dad wrestle, or did that just happen organically where you figured out, geez, I'm pretty good at this?
In 8th grade, all my buddies were playing. After football, they would play basketball. And so I got to the point where I said, well, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to be an athlete. I'm going to play basketball with my buddies, and this is going to be great. And we're going to go to high school. And I went to the tryout, and halfway through the tryout, the coach pulled me aside and he said, Bob, he goes, if you want, I'll talk to the wrestling coach for you.
That's his polite way of cutting you.
That's exactly what it was. He goes, basically he was trying to save other people's lives, because I wasn't a basketball player. I mean, I was just bumping into things, full contact basketball. So I went to wrestling, and I learned how, and I realized that this is pretty cool. And the thing I found out about wrestling in the first few years was that where football is a team sport, that when you win, you all celebrate. When you lose, you're all down, but you can blame it on somebody else. You don't go, it wasn't my fault, I didn't do it. Wrestling, you can't. Wrestling, it's one-on-one. And if you win, it's you. If you lose, it's you. I mean, the emotional ride was up and down, sharply. And I really enjoyed the emotion of it. That was a big part of it. And I think the more I did it, luckily I was able to, when I went to St. Joe's, I met up with a guy named John Story, who was the head wrestling coach, and he was offensive line coach in the football team. But he taught me my first year, my second year. He started working with me to the point where I didn't have anybody big enough to wrestle with. So, because by my junior year, I was about 230, 235, going on 240. And most of the guys we had were like 185, 200. So after practice was over, it was kind of like I did now. And this is probably another place where I learned it. After practice was finished and everybody left, Coach Story would go, okay, we're going 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I said, okay. So me and him in the wrestling room by ourselves, and he comes after me, and we start wrestling each other, go out of bounds, and I get up and I start walking back, and he tackles me. He goes, there's no stopping. He goes, don't stop. He goes, we're not getting up and walking back to the thing. We're not stopping for water. This is what we're doing it. And he did that with me for years. And it was when I won the state championship my senior year. I could think of no other reason for me to win than the way he trained me.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
What was that moment like for you when you won the state championship?
Unbelievable. I was wrestling a guy named Harold Smith, who had won the state championship from Canton McKinley. He won the state championship in the 185-pound weight class the year before. He had zero body fat. I mean, listen, if the kid went from home to school, he could starve to death. He had nothing extra on his body.
No reserve.
He had to continually eat to stay functioning. I mean, he was just cut from stone. And I just knew that he had the long arms, and he was long legs, and he had a great reach. And I just knew that this was gonna be the biggest test I'd ever had, because a lot of the guys that you wrestle going up into that point, a lot of times you're wrestling guys that you've wrestled before. I'd never wrestled Harold before, and I had a guy when I was working out, I was warming up, and I had a ref come up to me. He goes, and I guess after all these years later, I can say this. He leaned in, he said, "Hey Bob, good luck to you." And then he says to me, he says, "Push it." He goes, "If you push him, he'll quit."
Wow.
And
he'd never been pushed before, probably.
That's what he meant, and that's what he meant. I'm probably using the word wrong, but that's what he meant. He had nobody that pushed him. He was always in control, kept control. We had, back then there was a lot of riding time. You could get on top of somebody and ride them and just kind of waste time if you wanted to. And but like I said, long arms, everything. I went out there and just battled them. And then at one point at the beginning of the third quarter, or third period, he went to stand up. I brought him back down to the mat, and I came up on him, and he lifted his head up, and then he went his head went down. And I went, "Oh crap, this is it." His head went down, and at that point I came across the face and grabbed the far arm and did everything I could to bring him down. But it was one of the most amazing, one of those things where you've never wrestled a guy before, he's incredible, and then you end up winning. You remember what I was telling you before about that emotional ride up and down, and the win is all yours, the losses are all yours. This had to be one of the biggest highs that I've ever had. And I just remember shaking his hand, shaking his coach's hand, coming back to the sidelines, and Coach Story was there. And and I went to hug him, and he bends down and he picks me up. I'm like, crap, my coach just took me down.
I imagine he felt like that was a little bit of his state championship too.
I would not, I'd venture to say that I don't know if it would have been the same ending if it wasn't for John Story.
Wow.
If it wasn't for, especially that last year when he really and truly pushed me, I don't know that it would have been the same ending. I mean, I don't know if to be the Herald's, the finals match. But along the way, I don't know. I was in incredible condition because he worked me so much. Everything we had worked on so many things repetitively for so long that everything I did was without thinking. And all those things were what he brought to me. And like I said, I will say, if somebody says, would you have won the championship without him? I would say probably not.
So let me ask you about your recruitment. Was it for you always Notre Dame, or was there a chance that you almost went somewhere else?
We had, Notre Dame was always obviously Notre Dame. My dad was a huge Notre Dame. We were born and raised Catholic, so that made us obviously you have to be a Notre Dame fan. But when I started realizing that I was getting recruited by schools, and I thought, this is kind of cool. I get to go visit some of them, and so I ended up picking 6 schools. Notre Dame was one, Michigan, Ohio State, Purdue, Virginia, and Alabama. But part of the problem was for me that I wrestled. Being a wrestler in high school, I was still wrestling, and so Saturday nights we wrestled. So I couldn't go on these visitations until Sunday morning. I don't want to say I didn't get good guys showing me around, because I did, but they weren't as committed. It was kind of like, hey, look at that, look at that, look at that. I remember at Ohio State, one of the varsity guys was taking me around, and at the time they give you like $20 or something like that for expenses. For taking the kid around, and the player had something to do, like homework or something. And so he gave like $10 to a freshman. He goes, go take Golic around. and this freshman ended up said, oh crap, I got to go do a paper. And he goes, and he took me down to like Mirror Lake and some of those areas, and he just goes, yeah, hang out here, this is cool. And so I just remember sitting there looking around going, okay. It wasn't sold very well to me.
And this is why Bob Golic didn't go to Ohio State.
Long story short, Virginia was a nice visit. They were known for their linebackers at the time. Purdue was a nice visit, had a great education. Michigan was, I don't know, I think I went to see Michigan just because it was Michigan. You know, they were a good team. When it came down to that last night, it was when I had to make the decision. I looked at my dad and I said, you know, Notre Dame. I got to go Notre Dame.
Wow.
And I don't think he could have been any happier.
Sure.
I think he was ready with all kinds of ideas about what to say to me if I chose one of the other lesser schools. in his mind, it would have been tough. So the next morning, we called them. Well, we called them that next morning. The coaches came over and they brought the scholarships and we signed them and took pictures and did that whole thing.
Little did Notre Dame know at the time they signed you that a flood of Golics would follow.
Yeah, I don't think, and it probably ended up with, I don't even know if they knew we had extra ones in the wings.
What was your experience like there? How would you characterize your time at Notre Dame? You won a national championship in football, great deal of success as a wrestler.
Yeah, it was hard at first because you're all of a sudden you're on your own. You've got to make, as much as you hate having your parents tell you what to do, a lot of times you wish your parents were there to tell you what to do. It's it's one of those things. So, but it was nice, and I was young too. I was 17 still. My birthday was weird time, so I was still 17, and because of an injury, I got in and started playing. My freshman year, we played. The first game was Boston College, and I didn't play in. Second game was Purdue, and our middle linebacker, Tom Eastman, was hurt in that game, and they put me in. And I played the rest of the game. Next week, we were playing Northwestern at home, and I didn't even think twice about it, but then I looked, and I was number 1 on the depth chart. And so, like I said, I'm still 17, playing against Northwestern. It was some of the most surreal stuff. And it was a sunny day, and you go out there and I would watch our offense come out of the huddle and the sun glinting off the helmets. I know I sound like some old what's his name, Facenda?
John Facenda. No, but that's Facenda. A great visual because I can see it in my mind as you're explaining it.
Yeah. And like I said, and I got in, and I guess I liked it enough to work hard enough to keep it. But yeah, then the year I left, my next brother came in, Greg, and then obviously Mike the year after that, I think it was.
Let's talk about your draft experience. After the career that you had at Notre Dame, it was obvious that you could easily take this to the next level. I believe you were a second-round draft pick. What was your pre-draft experience like? Because God knows it was so much different then compared to the circus that it is now.
Yeah. We had no ESPN, so we couldn't watch it. We didn't know. In fact, somebody had an 800 number that you could call, and they would say, and they would tell you who was getting drafted. So that was all we had. And I remember that I had hurt my knee, like I had told you. That senior year, the regionals, which qualified us for the national tournament, that my senior year was at Notre Dame, and I hadn't wrestled any matches. But I said, you know what? Because of my knee, I said, you know what? The regionals are right here. I said, I think this is a sign that I'm supposed to do this because I was ranked number 1. going into the season. And because all the good guys left, graduated. But so I did it, and I wrestled in the tournament. And unfortunately, one of the kids, the kid from Cal Poly, started going after my knee that was wrapped. And snapped it out straight, got it caught on my heel caught on the mat, and he snapped it out straight. And I could barely walk on it, and I went back out there to finish. I said, I'm going to finish this, and I beat the crap out of him. I mean, to the point where most referees would have thrown me out of the game.
Right.
The ref kept going, looking away.
Maybe this is karma.
Yeah, he saw what the guy did. So I ended up, and the next day my leg was just like swollen stiff. And I thought, okay, I screwed it all up. I mean, I just because I wanted to have my fun, I screwed it up. And so I didn't wrestle. I had to forfeit. They were gonna take me anyway. They had like an extra pick, and they had to take to the tournament. They were gonna take me anyway, but it was like 8 or 9 days away. And I said, first off, I don't know this will be well in time for that. And I really got to get focused on NFL. And so I focused on that. I had been told by a number of people that I was going to be in the first 10 or the first 20, depending who I talked to. I mean, it could have been blown smoke, who knows. But that morning when it started, we kind of sat around, had the phone sitting right in the middle of the room, and the day started going on and on and on. Long story short, it's 10 minutes to 2, and we're there in the second round. A guy named Dave Huffman, who was our center, got drafted in the first round by Minnesota. Second round, the phone rings. I pick it up, and it says, "This is Coach so-and-so from the Giants. We wanted to know what you feel about playing center." That's exactly what I did. and I was just like, I mean, I haven't played offensive line since high school. I mean, and he goes, okay, just wanted to check, and hung up. And I'm sitting there just freaking out at that point. Oh my God, nobody's going to come get me. It's second round already. I was supposed to have gone. And 20 minutes later, at about 10 after 2, I get a call and said, Bob, it's Bucko Kilroy from the Patriots. You know, we picked you with our second round pick in pick number 52 or whatever it was. And a big sigh of relief because I asked him, I said, linebacker, right? He goes, yeah. So, but it was pretty weird. Plus, since you didn't know what was going on, anytime the phone rang, you were just like, oh my God. You know, and like first call was about an hour after it started. I'm like, oh my God. I hello? Yes. Hey, Bob, it's Brother Thomas downstairs. Could you bring the vacuum cleaner back? No. Leave me alone.
Oh.
I'll buy you a brand new one if you just leave me alone.
Thank goodness for the technology today.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, most of these guys know where they're going ahead of time. Sometimes some of the guys early, but yeah. Then it was go down, meet people. I remember telling the media they had drafted a guy named Rick Stanford out of South Carolina, defensive back, number 1. I was number 2. And I remember we met there, had a press conference, and they said, Bob, how long you want to play? I said, 20 years. And they all laughed at me. I'm like, why is everybody laughing at me?
So what was your, you lasted 3 years there, and I'm sure things didn't end the way you had hoped. How would you characterize your time with the Patriots?
You mean like getting cut? Yeah,
I didn't. The whole thing.
I didn't. None of my dreams included being cut by the team that drafted me. It was, well, my first year, I was on IR. We were doing the goal line drill. And I got trapped by a guy named Leon Gray, who was a big offensive tackle, or guard, one of the two. And he came down, hit me in the side of the shoulder, and pushed it in, and ended up doing damage to the nerves in the joint. And so I couldn't move the arm at all, just kind of hung there for a long time. So I missed the year. I think I played in the last game of the season. They activated me to, see, I guess, if I was still worthwhile to have around. And then the next 2 years, I battled. I knew that I wasn't as good a linebacker as I needed to be. I hoped that I was going to get better the more comfortable I got, because I was I'm missing that first year. I was kind of freaked out about the whole thing, but I hoped I would get better. But going into my fourth season, there was a guy, they drafted a guy, number 1, Clayton Weishuhn. He was like 22, 23 years old, out of somewhere in the heartland of America. And they brought him in evidently to take my place. Here's me. I'm like 24, being replaced by a younger guy, 23-year-old.
It's a rough game.
And I told the coach, I said, listen, and I went in before the last preseason game, before the second last preseason game. I said, listen, if you can make a decision after this game on whether you're going to keep me or not, could you do that? Because that will give me one more game, 1 more week to maybe get picked up. He goes, we will do our best. And so I think we played Dallas, and I think we lost preseason game. And remember, we're sitting down in the locker room with me and some of the guys, Steve Nelson, Billy Matthews, and we're all kind of hanging around. And all of a sudden, Steve Sidwell, our linebacker coach, walks in, and he's a rookie pro coach, because they had just come from, him and Ron Myers had just come from SMU. And so he comes in, and he's like, I see him just like looking around. Then all of a sudden his eyes lock on mine. And all the guys that were sitting around me, they scattered like roaches. like, oh my God.
I'm not with him.
He's going to look at me too. Avert your eyes. And so he pulled me aside, and he goes, come on upstairs, we're going to have to let you go. And I'm going, God, he sounds funny. And we got to the top of the stairs, and he goes, I'm so sorry. He goes, I've never had to do anything like this before. And I realized he's crying.
Wow.
And I pushed him into an empty office, and I said, it's okay. This stuff happens. I mean, I'll get picked up by somebody. Everything will work out great. And as I'm about 15 minutes later, after I talked to the head coach, I was standing outside going, why was I giving the guy who cut me a pep talk? Don't worry, it'll get easier for you cutting people. In fact, you'll look forward to it. Turk.
Not supposed to be that way, Bob.
It wasn't, but I was too sensitive.
So how was it the Browns picked you up? How did that go?
I was driving home with my stuff to back to Cleveland from Massachusetts. About halfway home, I called my dad, and he said that he goes, don't worry about it, Bobby. He goes, we got a call from I think he said the Chicago Fire, because I think at the time it was the USFL had started. Sure. And so I said, oh, joy. The Chicago Fire. But again, I mean, I looked at it as, here's something I can do, and maybe I'll get a chance to play more after that. And I don't know. My fear was that I was done playing football. And I loved playing football. I mean, I loved the camaraderie. I loved the physical nature of the game. I loved the emotion of the wins and the losses. it was, and my biggest fear was I would never get to play it again. And so I got back to my dad's house and was there. It was late at night. Next day about dinner time, I get a call. And they said, yeah, Bob, this is Bill Davis of the Browns, player personnel guy. And he says, how do you feel about playing nose tackle? And here I am, I'm having flashbacks to the Giants guy, the guy from the Giants going, hey, how do you play center? And I said, sure, I'd love to play nose tackle. I could play nose tackle. I could play linebacker. You know, I've done lots of stuff. And he goes, well, do you wanna come with us? And I said, well, and he goes, we actually own you now. He goes, we paid $100 to buy you off the waiver wire. And I said, I'm going to get more than that, right? $100. I mean, do I get that back? Do I have to pay that? So anyway, the next day I went down there, and it all started very quickly. That took a 235, 240 pound linebacker, which part of the problem with the Patriots was I had to starve myself every week to get to that point because I just felt like my natural weight was higher than that. But I was 240 pounds. They made me strap on knee braces. And I was like, I don't know that guys that are 240 can wear these. I mean, they looked like I looked weird. But they took me out and they put me in against the Raiders. And we played out there in LA. And I got to play against a guy named Dave Dalby, the center. I remember calling a stunt and going around the outside and running into Gene Upshaw. You know,
wow.
some of these big name guys that are just, you know, historic Raiders players. And, you know, it was cool. And somewhere along the way, I guess they said it looked like I don't know if I worked hard. I don't know if they saw something, but they didn't cut me. And
it's really a career rebirth for you, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I really always felt like if I could get a chance, then a legit chance that I could probably, I had convinced myself, or my dad had convinced me, if you have a chance, you can do it. You know, you can find a way to make it work. And I think that I saw, if I had a chance, I would be able to make the team. But obviously, when it becomes real, you don't know. You know, after that last preseason game of the year, and I'm waiting to find out who's getting cut. I don't know. I'm not very optimistic about the fact that I'm going to stick around since I was out of position. And I found out later from Bill Davis. I said, why did you guys pick me up? I mean, I was a failed linebacker. He goes, first off, it was only $100. And I said, okay, can we drop that now? I mean, can we get past $100? You're going to use that in my next negotiation? You realize you're only worth $100.
We took a flyer.
But he said, you know, and I don't know if Bill was from Cleveland. Some of the guys who were there, they had said they had watched me wrestle. And they had known that I had wrestled in high school and in college. And they said, wrestling's strength and balance and leverage and control, and which is, I guess, what a nose tackle does. And they said, you know what? The $100, let's bring them in and see if their idea worked. And so that was it. It was my wrestling career.
Wow.
That helped the Browns decide to pick me up for $100.
Your years in Cleveland were very successful, both from an individual standpoint. The team had some success as well, and the fans took to you like you would expect. You're from the area. You're a gritty, hardworking guy. And in so many ways, I always thought, Bob, that you kind of, and this, I felt why you were a fan favorite, you kind of personified what Cleveland Browns fans are.
I thank you for saying that, because I think that's a great thing. I knew what Browns fans were like already. I actually, when I was still a Patriot and we got eliminated, I think we were 2-14 one year, and came back, and I actually sat in the dog pound, which was before it was a dog pound.
Sure.
And for the Red Ripe 88 game.
Wow.
I know. Luckily, at halftime, my alcohol had frozen, and I go, "That's not supposed to happen, is it?" Like, no, but it was like a slushy. And I said, "Look, this game's on TV. What the hell are we doing here?" So I went home and missed the second half. But I knew
nothing happened. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know. No, I got that. When I went out to LA, one of my friends was Mike Davis, and defensive back for the Raiders. And I remember the first time I was at his house, I'm noticing these trophies and game balls and stuff. And I'm walking behind him, and he grabs a ball and he throws it over his shoulder, and I catch it, and it says Red Right 88.
Oh no!
And I threw it on the ground. I said, "I can't touch this. They won't let me back into Cleveland if I touch this." So yeah, nothing happened. We'll ignore that. And it's like nothing happened against Elway.
Yeah, exactly.
Whole different.
What are those memories like for you today, Bob?
Which ones? The drive?
The drive.
Let's see. Would you go an hour before you asked me?
I'm sorry for bringing it up at all.
That's okay. No. It was really incredible, the games, how amazing they were. The fumble game I wasn't in because I had broken my arm last game of the season. And I'd convinced them, had we made the Super Bowl, I was gonna play, because they had sent me back to the Cleveland Clinic, and they made me a brace that went from my hand hinged at the wrist, hinged here, and it went all the way up to my shoulder. And so during the practices for that Denver game in Denver, I would stand in the back of meeting rooms just banging the wall, thinking, they put metal plates in there, it's not going to do anything. They screwed it in tight. But looking at it, it's still frustrating. It's still frustrating because every time I see the video of it, I realize that he didn't make that kick.
I agree with you. I still don't think he made it.
No, I don't either. And I think that we would have been much better in the Super Bowl than the Broncos were, because they played horribly. But it was, it's just one of those things. Now it's part of the dialogue. It's not happy, it's not sad, it's not anything except, we were in the drive.
It happened.
Yeah, it happened. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get over that?
Probably. Well, I think as long as I was continued to play, I had other things happening, other games, and so it was there in the back of my mind, and so it was always there, but I was still focused on other things, so it never laid there like a big rotting fish,
right,
making me feel bad. So
does it now though?
No. I mean, I hate the fact. One of the things I like about it, that I like about this. It was a hard-fought battle, as was the Jets game before, and the week before. And I just remember when the refs signaled that the field goal was good. I just remember it seemed like everything went quiet. And then pretty quickly right after that, like 10, 15 seconds, all of a sudden everybody started cheering. It was like they were disappointed, but they were excited. I mean, they were happy that we had done that we had gotten to that point. And that was one of those things where you just realize how cool the Browns fans are. And but there's like all kinds of times where I would get frustrated. I'd get calls from like ESPN or somebody and say, "Hey Bob, we're coming to town. Can we come in and talk to you?" I'm like, "Oh great, cool. Bob Golic, retrospective." And I'd get in there and I'd sit down, they'd mic me up, and I would go, and they'd say, "Hey Bob, so what about the drive?" I go, "Oh, so this isn't about me.
This is about
this isn't about Bob the narcissist. This is about the drive." So
it's a part of the city's lore. It's a part of all the players that played in that game. And I guess it never gets easy to have to deal with that. What was the Jets game like the week before? When I think back on my fandom as a Browns fan, I think that's the most excited. First of all, it was the biggest roller coaster I'd ever been on for one game as a fan. But I also think that it was the most excited I had ever been at any sporting event. To see that deficit erased and then to win that game. Did you ever experience, outside of your national championship at Notre Dame, did you ever experience that kind of euphoric high on a football field?
I don't think so. I mean, it was pretty amazing. I mean, the idea, first off, that it was that the game was lasting so long, and it, I don't know, I always saw myself like as being like a gladiator. And, when some people have to quit, other people keep fighting. And it just was amazing that we were still fighting, and we were coming back, and it was, so yeah, it was one of those special games. And plus, I remember looking up and seeing that the fans were leaving, and I'm going, God, we must really look bad. And of course, we started coming back, and people are cheering, and people are pounding on the side of the stadium. Let us back in.
Well, listen, first of all, I want to thank you for giving us so much of your time. Very gracious, and it was great catching up with you. And I'm sure our viewers really enjoyed hearing old stories and just kind of getting in touch again with Bob Golic. So, Bob, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm going to get yelled at because I didn't talk about my wife or kids or anybody, but
now you have.
You know what? Let them do their own stuff. All right, Jay. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much. And thank you at home for watching another edition of Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. Please check us out next time. For Bob Golic, I'm Jay Crawford. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.